Chapter 1843 Trolley Problem. All the people who entered the light gate went through this question, and everyone gave their own understanding, each different. For example, the arrogant emperor said, "My life is a miracle in this world. My appearance itself is meaningful." As the only dog among the creatures behind the light gate, Labrador Ryan spread his hands and said, "This is a very serious question. You know, as a unique dog, I have a profound understanding of this world. Cognition, like those hypocritical and ignorant humans. I often look up at the stars at night. No matter what answers they gave, the girl in red would give the same evaluation in the end. Pass. Everyone can pass the first level. There is no standard answer. There is no so-called standard answer to this kind of question itself. It only reflects people's understanding of the world and life. As a result, everyone successfully arrived at the second level, which was the second world. When Zhang Yi opened his eyes, he heard a rumbling sound in his ears, and the night wind was howling. This was a huge valley, and he was standing on a speeding train. The girl in red appeared beside him again, pointing ahead and saying, "There are 5 people tied to the railroad ahead. The train is about to run over their bodies, and they will surely die." She then pointed in another direction and said, "There is a fork in the road in the far direction. You can choose to let the train go on the new road ahead to prevent those 5 people from being crushed to death. But there is also a person tied up on that road. Now, what will you choose? Let the train run over those 5 people and do nothing. Or turn around and save those 5 people, but at the same time kill another person?" Zhang Yi stood on the train, and a joystick appeared next to his hand, which could control the train's direction at any time. His brows furrowed deeply. At this time, he had already realized a problem. The trials of the great god-level civilizations, the criteria for selecting people, do not focus on strength, because there is no civilization that is stronger than them. They want to screen people who can solve problems that they cannot solve themselves. It must be about a higher level of meaning, and that kind of thing comes from human nature itself. For example, the problem at the first level and the current choice of humanity. The train was still some distance away from the fork in the road ahead, giving Zhang Yi enough time to think. He frowned, wondering how to make a decision to satisfy the examiner in front of him. And all the people who entered the world behind the light gate were faced with almost the same problem at this time. It's just that the situations faced by different people are exactly the same. Same problem, same manifestation. For example, when he was in Yichigal, what he saw was a huge steel castle like a mountain, and on the way he encountered a shaped mobile castle. He couldn't stop the rapidly moving steel castle, so he had to either crush the small mobile castle in front of him or a larger castle in another direction. At this time, Uncle was standing in the train's cab, his hands holding the joystick soaked with sweat. Although he knew that everything was fake, he could still hear the desperate cries of those people on the railway. Since it is a trial, there must be ways to do some incredible things. For example, transmit those people's wailing and pleading voices to his ears. The 5 people said, "If you do nothing, we will die. But you have the power to save us now. It should be easy for you to choose between 1 life and 5 lives." The man on the other railway said, "Although I am alone, the train was originally heading in my direction. I should have died. If you changed the direction of the train, you would be the murderer who killed me. But if you do nothing, then their deaths have nothing to do with you. Because if you were here, they would have died anyway." 2 different voices rang in Uncle Kim's ears, making him feel torn. His hands were shaking violently, and he did not make a choice until the train passed the location of the 5 people. He did not make a choice, although in form it was no different from choosing to crush 5 people to death or choosing to do nothing. But this is a test, and choosing to do everything has completely different meanings than doing nothing. So, he was eliminated by the girl in red and turned into a ray of light and disappeared from this world. The next moment he returned to the outside of the light gate. Looking at the familiar scene in front of him, the uncle sighed, but shook his head without any regrets. And one after another, many people were teleported to the outside world. The second level eliminated many people. Their choices were different. Some chose to crush 5 people to death, while others chose to change their route and exchange one person's life for 5 lives, but they were also eliminated. They looked at each other, and Uncle Ko discovered that some members of the Fukiage Force and the Shinto Force were here, so he went over to ask, "How did you get eliminated?" He saw several familiar faces in the crowd, such as Xingyu, the leader of the Qingpu base. Xing spread his hands in bewilderment. "I know it very well, but I hesitated for a long time when I was faced with the choice. Although I changed direction at the last moment, I was still eliminated." The uncle frowned and muttered to himself, "But I didn't make a choice. I let the train run normally and was still eliminated. So no matter what choice I make, it will affect the result." Others were talking about it. In fact, there are only 2 choices. Everyone has similar reasons, but they all know why they are the ones to be eliminated. Uncle sighed and said, "Perhaps we are lacking some special qualities." At this time in the huge valley, Fatty Sue faced the same test. The girl in red stood beside him and asked as a bystander, "Then you can make a choice. Do you want to change the track of the train and let 5 people be crushed to death? Or do you want to change the track of the train and let 5 people be crushed to death? Direction and let the people on the other track die. What would you choose?" Fatty Sue hesitated for a long time. The train rumbled along, and the conversation between the people on the 2 tracks also rang in his mind. After a while, he loosened his grip on the joystick and took 2 steps back. "I choose what to do." The girl in red asked, "Why?" Fatty Sue said hesitantly, "It's too difficult for me to decide the life and death of others. So I simply don't think about this problem and let the train move on its own. This is what should have happened considering my existence. So it has nothing to do with me." The girl in red nodded at the explanation given by Fatty Sue. "Consider everything as a bystander?" Fat Sue looked at the girl in red nervously. The train was still moving rapidly at this moment, and it seemed that it was about to run over the people in front, but it had not yet reached the fork in the road. "Do I pass this?" No matter how much hope he had in himself, after all, there was really nothing commendable about such a retreating and weak behavior. But the next moment, he saw the girl in red nodded slightly. "You passed." Fat Sue was ecstatic, and a surprised smile appeared on his face. "Sure enough, I am an extraordinary genius." When the same problem appeared in front of Yitujier, he pulled the joystick without hesitation after listening to the rules of the girl in red, causing the giant steel castle to change its course and crush the huge steel castle. Broken. Sacrificing individual interests for the benefit of the collective is inevitable at some point. The red dress girl did not comment on his actions, but just asked, "So, what if you were the one being sacrificed?" Yichigel still did not hesitate at all, and said calmly, "I am the same." No one can lie in front of the girl in red. It is extremely stupid to lie in front of such a high-level being. So what Yichigel said was exactly what he really thought. He could really sacrifice his life for the survival of the Tsang Jiyuan civilization. Because his existence has been too long, life is not something worth lingering on for him. It's just him. This is true for Loradek, Prados, the other 10 demons, and their companions who self-destructed one after another over the long era. Their only goal until now is to ensure that Tsang Jiyuan can remain in this world. Because when a civilization is completely destroyed, all its physical objects remain, but all traces of civilization will disappear with the wind. Then their existence would be completely meaningless. The girl in red nodded. "You have passed this test." As for King Arthur, he looked at the speeding train ahead and released the joystick just like Fatty Sue. All people are equal and free, and no one can make decisions about the life of another. If the price I have to pay to save these 5 people is to let another innocent person die, I firmly oppose it. So, I will change the direction of the train. The girl in red asked calmly, "But if you do nothing, you'll just have to watch the 5 people on the track ahead die. Do you think this is right?" King Arthur replied without hesitation, "I am not qualified to decide the life or death of others. If one person's life saves 5 people, it is murder. As for the 5 people on the track ahead, they should have died if it weren't for me." King Arthur's answer was approved by the girl in red, so he also passed the test this time and was teleported to the next node. Arnold Ollie, a member of the regal church who holds multiple titles including Cardinal, Archbishop Michael, and Death Knight, raised a question when faced with such a test. Are there any followers of the Junjing Church among these people? The girl in red replied, I don't know. Either they are all or they are none. From an anthropological point of view, all their social attributes are exactly the same. Alib raised the silver cross hanging on his chest, placed it to his lips, and kissed it. Then he said, Death is just returning to the arms of God, and it is not something to be afraid of. Only those who do not believe in God devoutly will fall into hell. So their life and death should be decided by God. I will only pray for them and ask God to decide whether they are guilty or not. A strange color flashed in the eyes of the girl in red. At this moment, she understood human religion. So Alib was also teleported to the next node. When Deng Shintong faced this problem, he hesitated for a long time and finally chose to sacrifice that one person in exchange for the survival of 5 people. Why did you make such a choice? The red-dressed girl stared at him and asked calmly. Deng Shintong folded his hands across his chest, scratched his cheek with one fingertip, and replied with a smile. All men are created equal. This is indeed a very good slogan. But in fact, there has never been true equality in this world. For 99.99999% of the lives in this world, whether they are intelligent creatures of advanced civilizations, hyenas running on the savannah, or earthworms crawling underground, their fate is determined from the moment they are born. Sheep have to avoid being hunted by wolves all their lives, and plants and trees can only be eaten. Even for advanced creatures like humans, their fate is almost determined from birth. I don't believe there is true equality in this world, Deng Shintong said very calmly. So saving 1 life or 5 lives is a difficult decision. But I still choose to save that one person. After Deng Shintong finished speaking, he waited for the girl in red to give her evaluation. However, a gust of wind suddenly blew in front of him, and Deng Shintong subconsciously closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, he suddenly found himself standing on a bridge. Beep, beep, beep. From a distance came the loud whistle of a train. Deng Shintong then discovered that the scene before him was different from before. He was standing on a bridge across the railway, and a train was speeding towards him from a distance. In front of the train, 5 people were still tied up and were about to be crushed to death by the train. Yes, there was also a person tied in front of Fatty Sue. As long as Fatty Sue gave him a gentle push, he would immediately fall down and land on the railroad tracks. The girl in red asked again, well, let's change the question a little bit. It's no longer 2 railways, but a living person standing in front of you. As long as you push him down, you can stop the train from moving forward and give those 5 people the right to live. You pushed him down? The girl in red pointed at the person in front of her and asked in a voice without any emotion. Deng Shintong looked at the man in front of him, and for a moment, he was shocked even more. Even though he knew everything was fake, this kind of question tested his heart, and he had to face it as if it were real. Does he need to push this innocent man down himself and kill him so that the other 5 people can survive? This is much more difficult than simply turning a joystick. Killing someone at a distance with a gun is less sinful than stabbing someone in the body with a gun. If you can use a computer and a mouse to control a drone to attack the enemy, it will even give you a gaming-like pleasure, and you won't feel guilty about killing people. The truth is, these behaviors are essentially the same. The girl in red kept looking at Deng Shintong, waiting for his answer. In front of Deng Shintong was the man's back, and the train was approaching. Finally, when the train rumbled under the bridge, Deng Shintong did not move. His eyes were a little dazed because he felt that his contradictory behavior should be the end of him. Now, is there anything you want to say? The girl in red asked. Deng Shintong closed his eyes, but soon opened them again. At this moment, his eyes were extremely firm. I still think there is nothing wrong with my ideas. I didn't push him down because I couldn't bear it emotionally and morally as a biological individual, but it doesn't mean that I think my point of view is wrong. When faced with a situation where one party's interests must be sacrificed, choosing the interests of the majority is the golden rule that humans have always followed. Aren't humans always doing multiple choice questions? Even when primitive people were faced with powerful enemies, they would have no choice but to abandon the old, weak, sick, and disabled in the tribe. After establishing a kingdom, they would send women to marry, throw them into tiger dens, or even sacrifice their lives to preserve the survival of the group. Deng Shintong took a deep breath and said, "This is not a simple question of right or wrong. It is a difficult decision that the collective has to make if it wants to survive for a long time." The cold voice of the girl in red reached his ears. "You passed." Also in the valley. This time, standing on the train was Yang Xinxin, who was wearing a black combat uniform and had long seaweed-like hair. Faced with this kind of question, what would you choose? The girl in red asked calmly. Yang Xinxin looked at the fork in the road that was getting closer and closer. She knew very well that this was just an artificial illusion. There are only two choices, so the purpose of the test is not to see how the tester does it. Because the trolley problem never has a correct answer. So, what you really want to test is the way the test takers answer questions. She looked ahead at the two forked roads. Shin points to the path of only one person. If I choose to sacrifice one person's life to save 5 people. Then this is the principle of maximizing benefits, choosing to sacrifice the interests of a few people in the collective to preserve the interests of the majority. But the biggest problem with the principle of maximizing benefits is that such a completely equal relationship does not exist. If there is such a problem, there is a high probability that there will be inequality in personal identity, status, wealth, and social relationships. Status. Especially the closeness of the relationship with the person making the choice is an important factor influencing the choice. For example, if you tie a person up on a railway and that person is your relative, and the 5 people next to him are your relatives, then the principle of maximizing benefits no longer applies. Human selfishness cannot be eliminated. After that, Yang Xinxin pointed forward. If you choose not to turn the train, then it is the principle of freedom first. Human life should not be deprived under this principle. Because everyone is born free and equal, no one has the right to decide the life and death of others. So I have no right to deprive that person of his life in order to safeguard the so-called collective interests. There was a gleam in the eyes of the girl in red, and she looked at Yang Xinxin with admiration in her eyes. Even in the face of a weak civilization, she still felt something unusual from Yang Xinxin. Just like when humans were breeding dog breeds, they discovered a breed called Border Collie. It is wonder and admiration. So, if you need to make a choice, would you prefer the former or the latter? In fact, at this time, the girl in red had already given Yang Xinxin the pass. But she wanted to ask more and see how the other party would answer. Yang Xinxin did not give a direct answer to the train problem because she knew from the beginning that it was not the crux of the problem, but just a formal problem, just like Schrödinger's cat. So she said, how to make a choice? In fact, the question is about standard setting. Which one should come first, collective interests or individual interests? It depends on whether you are willing to define a standard as a universal law when you propose it. She slowly spread out her fair palms and looked straight at the girl in red. That is to say, whether you choose the former or the latter, it should be based on all circumstances. Including when you are on the 2 railways, you will still abide by the rules. At this point, there is no need to say more. Because there is no correct answer to this question itself, and what the girl in red wants is to understand the cognitive understanding of life by creatures in the civilization where the trial taker lives. She rarely smiled at Yang Xinxin. Very interesting opinion. There was no need to continue the experiment, and the girl in red directly gave it to Yang Xinxin for approval. The problem came to Zhang Yi. The girl in red stood beside Zhang Yi and said to him, "What do you want to choose now? Should we divert the train and sacrifice one person to save 5 lives? Or should we let the train continue on its way, killing the 5 people ahead without making any changes?" At this moment, the voices of people on the 2 roads also rang in Zhang Yi's mind. The man on the road said, "It's a good deal to exchange 1 life for the lives of 5 of us. If you do nothing, you will just watch us die. Now you see, things have gone wrong for you. There is a connection, and you can't pretend you know nothing." The man on the road also said, "I should not have died. If you change the track of the train, you will murder my life." Zhang Yi frowned, paused for at least a second, and then pulled the joystick decisively without hesitation. The train turned in the middle and headed for another road. The people tied to the road were crushed to death. Seeing Zhang Yi's decisiveness, the girl in red quickly changed the scene. At this time, Zhang Yi was standing on the bridge. A train was speeding towards him in the distance, and he had to choose whether to push the person in front of him onto the track to stop the train from moving. This time, Zhang Yi chose to do nothing. Dear viewers, this video ends here. Please like, comment, and subscribe if not already. It helps me a lot. Thanks.